Hey everybody, welcome to week 11. I've closed week nine's discussion area. People were putting in really good, thoughtful comments about some of the challenges and barriers that rural areas face when they're trying to influence policy. And I think most of you can imagine how some of those challenges and barriers are ones that many marginalized communities probably face when they're trying to influence policy. Those aren't just barriers that are only for rural communities. So I'm leaving week nine, the policy consultation area, open. And I want people to continue posting in there if you haven't done so already, because that policy consultation is worth 5% of your mark. So even if you haven't done one yet, read through the ones that other people have done. You could probably do a similar one and be able to post something in there so that you have some information that you can use when you're putting together your participation rubric. Now I want to talk about this week. And this week we're talking about collaboration and bringing together policy consultations and how to do that in a way that really involves people and that in the end brings about some action. And in your discussion area, what I'm asking you to do is think back to week one. Think about the policy area that you were writing about. And now think about if you wanted to run a policy consultation on that area, if you wanted to change policy or move policy, who would be the stakeholders, who would be the important people or groups that you would want to hear from, and what do you think would be the best way to hear their ideas and their visions and their input on this area. So I'll give you a couple of examples just so you can get a sense. Let's think about climate change. So climate change was an area that a few people wrote about. And when you think about who are the stakeholders when it comes to climate change, you want to think about things like people, like businesses that are polluting, or that are contributing to greenhouse gases. So your oil emissions, your car companies, what are all of those businesses that you want to reach? Then you want to think about things like green businesses. So how do you pull in those businesses that are using solar panels and green energy and get them involved? And then there's other areas that are really important when it comes to climate change, like transportation, so bringing in the transit system, thinking about building codes, how do people build their buildings, what kind of buildings are they building, making sure that government is involved in it, because government has a huge say, and as we've seen, there can even be tensions between different levels of government. So right now the federal government really wants to implement some actions around climate change, and the provincial government, Doug Ford's government, is resisting that. And then, of course, our ordinary people. So how do we bring all those people together, and what's the best way to hear from them? And a few of you have gone to climate change consultations, and as far as I can see, they are simply putting in some information into an online form. And so my question to you is, do you think that is a good way of hearing all those stakeholders, making sure we're building an understanding and moving forward? So in your area, that's what I want you to write about. A really good example of a consultation where the different stakeholders are involved was Colleen's when she talks about the Baby Friendly Initiative. And she talks about how UNICEF brought together the doctors and the nurses and the hospital staff to talk about how they were going to implement this breastfeeding policy and get people involved. when I looked at that, I thought, okay, but who is one important stakeholder that's missing out of here? What about mothers? Are we talking to mothers about their experiences in the hospital and what would help them as well? So that's how I want you to think about that discussion area. Make sure you go back to your policy, think about who would be those important stakeholders, and then think about all these different types of policy consultations that you've heard about, all these different things that you know about visioning, structured conversations, um, large scale consultations where you're getting information online from as many people as you can. How do you bring those together to really hear from people about what their experiences are and what they want to see moving forward? In the reading for this week, the reading for this week is really interesting in that it describes the New Brunswick poverty consultation that they did. And they really took that idea of bringing those stakeholders together very seriously. And they were really successful in how they got people involved and how they were able to sustain the plan beyond just their current level of government. So I hope you have a great time writing your next discussion area. I've been loving reading what I've seen so far, and I look forward to seeing your thoughts.